Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about the what happens beyond the pipe power band and before the pipe power band. Right here you see the crossover happening right at transfer closing, which is usually signifies the end of the pipe power band. And that is because as you go higher in RPM, you get an intrusion in that space between transfer closing and exhaust closing with the diffuser wave. Oops. And at the same time, you're getting so little pressure at the exhaust closing. So you still have power, and you can still accelerate some, but it just goes down and down and down from there. So it's generally best not to rev higher than the pipe power band. And what happens before, if we say 7500 is the beginning of the pipe power band, when the end of the baffle wave is at exhaust closing, as you go higher than that, you get more and more pressure at exhaust closing. So that's the beginning of it right there. In this case, it's 7500. But as you go lower than that, you get more and more of the baffle wave intruding here on the intake time. So what you have is the reeds begin to open, and then they shut closed, and then the reeds have to wait until exhaust closing before suction begins to happen again in the crankcase, and they open again until TDC. So at this time, the baffle wave is working against you. It's contrary to engine power. The only way to counter that is with a boost bottle. The resonance of a boost bottle causes positive and negative pressure waves at the intake, and when that resonance is correct for this center RPM of the 1000 RPM power dip before power band, it causes a negative pressure wave to counter the positive wave of the baffle. And they really do work. I have one on my street bike, and it makes a world of difference. So you might ask, why only 1000 below the beginning of the pipe power band, which would be right there. If the pipe power band starts at 7500, the beginning of that power dip before the pipe power band would be at 6500. And you would think, well, why wouldn't it just continue as you go lower and lower? You have to realize that the lower the RPM you have, the more time you have in the cycle, and that means more time you have from exhaust closing to TDC. So even though you're losing more and more of your intake time here from BDC to TC, you're gaining more intake time, crankcase intake time, from exhaust closing to TDC. So generally speaking, it's only 1000 RPM below the lower point of the power band when you have that power dip. So this would be right almost in the middle of the power band. You've got nice blocking pressure at exhaust closing, and you've got almost a full intake cycle here. And what happens is you decrease the belly, you narrow that, which means you have less intrusion here, which is more beneficial to the intake, but at the same time you lessen your pipe power band, because the pipe power band depends on this width. So more belly length gives you more pipe power band, but it also lowers. Let me show you how it lowers. I'm going to put the peak here, right here at EC, for the best power. Okay. That's with a belly of 70 millimeters. Okay, so you've got, this is nice. You've got a nice increase in suction there. And what's going to happen, the peak of that suction is at the 21 mark here. Okay, I'm going to increase the belly length for a wider power band. Now I've got to change the header to bring this peak back over here. Okay, so now what have we done? We moved the peak of the diffuser from 21 all the way over here to 17. So we've lost intake suction. So even though you have a wider power band at peak, let's say from maybe 8700 on up, you've got a reduction in power. And I illustrate that on my site. See if I can find it. Right here. So longer belly, less power at the high RPM, but a wider power band. So even though it's a hassle, this is really important. Putting that rear wheel up, taking the spark plug out, and taking the ignition cover off to count the crank rotations per rear wheel rotation is very important, because that sets this distance right here, the RPM range for each gear when you upshift at the peak of the power here, or the end of the pipe power band. That really determines everything. How much you need. How much of a power band do you need? Do you need all of this, or would this be ideal? Because when you only need this, that means you can shorten that baffle or the belly length and raise the peak. So this program is a bit tedious in that you have to measure the exhaust port. You've got to calculate the blowdown area for sheet 1 right here. You have to figure out the angles on the cones. You've got to do all these steps, but it's the only way to do it right. There are automatic programs out there that will say, you know, this is the pipe you need for this request, and they're just giving you ballpark figures. That's all they're doing. And if I did a very specific comparison between what they recommend and what we can get using this program, you would see the difference. This is, you know, with human input and control, it's the only way to really get it right. And understanding what's happening is the very beginning. using this program over and over again until you're able to see the changes in the pipe power, how that affects the acceleration power and the spread of the RPM for each gear. It's the best way. It is absolutely the best way. If you want that extra edge, don't get one of those programs that just says, here you are, little Johnny, this is what you need to make your pipe. I've used those programs and they're not very good. It was a beginning step for me, and so here we are. It's complex, it's tedious, but it's not impossible. It's hard, yes, but not impossible. Anyone that applies themselves can do it, and I am here to answer your questions. If you have to, email me the EC Calc with all your data in it, and I can give you recommendations. Okay?